Hello my friends, today we are gonna create a blog application REST API using Node.js and MongoDB. We are gonna create an Express server, then we are gonna create a login and register routes. We will be able to update and delete user, create a new post, update and delete it, and add new categories. And also, you are going to learn how to use query to fetch all posts. For example, we are gonna fetch posts and filter them by user or category. And finally, we are going to create an upload route, and we will be able to upload an image and store it inside our server. If you didn't watch the previous video, we created a blog design using React. I highly recommend you to watch that video because in the next tutorial we are going to use that design and this API, and we are gonna create a complete blog application. I hope you will enjoy it. If you want to see more projects like this, you can subscribe to the channel. So if you are ready, let's get started. Okay. Firstly, I created here a folder, which is client, and I moved everything that we have done in the previous lesson. This is our React application. So I'm gonna create one more folder here. This is gonna be our API. It's gonna include our Express server, our routes, models, and MongoDB connection. So let's come here, this terminal, and I will say cd API. So inside this API folder, I'm gonna install my framework and libraries. To do that, you can write here npm I, or if you are using yarn add. Firstly, it's gonna be our Express server. To connect our MongoDB, I'm gonna use mongoose. To connect this MongoDB, we are gonna take a private URL from this page, and it's gonna include our password and username. So we should hide them somewhere inside this folder so nobody can reach them. To do that, I will install .env. And finally, we are gonna upload some images. To do that, I'm gonna install Multer. Oops, space here, and I'm gonna enter. During the installation, I'm gonna explain you this MongoDB. You can create free cluster and you can create your collections. As you remember, if you watched previous videos, we created some travel app and social media app. So we are gonna do the same thing. So let's go to clusters again. And here I'm gonna click connect. You can use terminal or desktop application, but we are gonna use inside our code. So I'm gonna choose second one. And this is our secret URL. I'm gonna copy this. And this is our username, and it's gonna be our password. So how we are gonna reach this? You can go to database access, and here, as you can see, we have a user. If you don't have, you can create new one. If I edit this, as you can see, we have a password here. So I'm gonna use this password inside that URL. Okay, let's go to the VS Code again. Okay, it's ready. So what I'm gonna do, firstly, I'm gonna create my index file, index.js. So let's create our Express server. I will say const express, and it's gonna require Express. I'm gonna create my application, const, let's say app, and Express. Okay. To use that, I should listen any port. So I will say app.listen, and I'm gonna indicate here my port number. You can write here anything. I will say just 5000. And after that, I will just console log this connection. I will say backend is running. So how I'm gonna run this application? Firstly, I should install my Node.js, because if you go to package.json, we have only dependencies here. We don't have any application yet. npm init. So it's gonna ask some questions, package name, version, description. I will just enter them. Is this okay? Of course. And tada, it's ready. So to start this application, you can write here, I will delete this test. We are not gonna test anything. And here, I will delete this. If I write here node index.js, and if I write here yarn start or npm start, it's gonna work. As you can see, it's working. Perfect. But if I make any changes here, let's say, for example, console log hello, and I'm saving, as you can see, nothing has changed. That's because it's not listening our application. But we have an awesome library. I'm gonna kill this process, and I'm gonna install yarn add nodemon. Okay, let's go to package.json again, and here I will say nodemon index.js, I will save, and again, let's start. As you can see, right now it's listening our application. If I change here, for example, Lama, as you can see, it's running again this application. We don't have to write anything. We don't have to start again and again. Awesome. So let's close here and here. So let's try our application in the browser. I will say app.use, and I'm gonna indicate here a URL. Let's say main URL. And after that, I'm gonna use my request and response. And I will say console log, hey, this is main URL. So let's go to the browser, and here I will say localhost and my port number here. As you can see, hey, this is main URL. If I change here, for example, Lama, hey, this is Lama URL. I'm refreshing page. Nothing has changed. If I go to Lama, awesome. So right now we have a REST API. We can reach any URL, but writing this inside index.js, it's not a best practice. That's because we will have authentication, user operations, category operations, post operations. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create here roots of these operations. For example, for user, for authentication, for post, something like that. But before, let's delete this and connect our DB. As you remember, we copy our URL. So what I will do, I will create my env file. And inside this .env file, you can hide any URL, any secret case, anything you don't want someone to reach them. So what I will do, I will say Mongo URL or whatever you say, and I'm gonna paste this URL. And here, I'm gonna choose my DB. Let's say blog, and here my username and password. Let's delete here and write Lama again. Okay, it's ready. So how I'm gonna use this env file? I should do my configuration. To do that, I'm gonna just call this .env, and it's gonna require .env. So if I come here and say .env.config, okay, right now we can reach this URL. Let's copy this. And after that, of course, we should import mongoose first. So I will say const mongoose and require mongoose. Okay, so let's look at our documentation here. I can close this. This is mongoose website, and here, as you can see, we have a connection method here. So I will copy this and paste here. So I should change this URL. How I'm gonna use my env file? I will say process and env, and right now I can paste here my MongoDB URL, Mongo URL. And by the way, something wrong with this Mongoose version, so I should write here use create index true. It's not crucial, but if you don't want to see any error here, I highly recommend you to use this, and it's gonna be true. Okay, so after that, if we connect this URL, I will say then, and I will say console log connected to Mongo. Okay, so if there is an error, I will say catch, and I'm gonna console log this error. So let's try. Okay, perfect. Connected to MongoDB. So I can shrink this terminal here. And inside this API folder, let's create our models and routes. I will say models and routes. Okay, let's decide what we are gonna create, which models. Firstly, we are gonna have users. Let's create here user.js. And second one will be our posts, post.js, and category. As you remember, I wrote here app.use and our URL. To use them, I'm gonna go to routes file, and I'm gonna create my URL routes. So first one will be users. In this case, we will be able to delete or update our users. We are gonna use this URL. And second one will be posts. We can create new posts, delete them, update them. And categories. And one more, when I create a user, I don't want to use this URL because it's not a user operation, so I'm gonna create here authentications. So you can write here auth.js. Okay. So let's close them and start with these users. So I'm gonna import Mongoose again, const Mongoose, and require Mongoose. So firstly, I should create my user schema. So I will say const user schema. So I will say new Mongoose, and I'm gonna create schema. And here my object. First one will be our username. Each user has its own username, and here type will be string, and it's gonna be required. It's gonna be true, and I will say unique true. So nobody can create a user with same username, and after that it's gonna be email. Again type string, and required and unique. I will just copy them, and here I will say password. Type will be string, and it's gonna be required again. And one more thing, I'm gonna add profile picture for each user. So I will say profile picture, and it's gonna include image URL, so it's gonna be type string again. So it's not gonna be required, because when you create a user, you don't have to upload any image first. So I will say default, and it's gonna be empty string. So one more thing I will do, you can create here created date or updated date, but there's a shortcut for this. A new object and timestamps. And I will say true. So it's gonna create our updated at and created at times. So finally, I'm gonna export this schema. So I will say module exports and mongoose.model. My model name will be user. And finally, I'm gonna pass my schema, user schema. Okay, that's all. So let's copy this And let's go to the post.js, and I'm gonna paste here. Let's change this name. It's gonna be post schema. And here. Okay. So let's delete them. So what we are gonna need here. Firstly, we will have title. It's gonna be string. And I will say required true, and I will say it will be unique. I don't want any post with same title. Okay. And after that, we will have description. So I will copy here and paste here. We can have post photograph. So I will say photo. And again, but it's not gonna require it. Let's write here false, or you can delete here, doesn't matter. And after that, I'm gonna create username. So we can see the author. And finally, I'm gonna choose my categories. So it's gonna be type array. We are gonna push all categories inside this array. For example, we will have array and let's say live, music, something like that. So let's delete this, and required will be false. And one more curly brackets here and comma. I forgot comma here. Okay, perfect. So our post model is ready also. I will copy this and I will go to category. Let's change these names. It's gonna be category. Okay, I will delete them. So it's gonna include just one property. It's gonna be name. Type will be string and required true. Okay, that's all. Actually, I can delete this timestamp, or it can stay, doesn't matter. It's not that important. So I will close these models, and let's go to these routes. To create router, we can use our Express framework. So I will say const router, and it's gonna be require Express, and I'm gonna call router method here. Okay. So which model I'm gonna use in this authentication route? I'm gonna use just user. So let's import this const user, and it's gonna be require. I will go to models folder, and inside I will use user. Okay. Firstly, it's gonna be register, and one more is gonna be login. So I can use this router here. I'll say router, and which method I'm gonna use? It's gonna be get or post or put. So if you are creating something, it should be post method. If you are updating existing model, you should use put method. If you are deleting some model, you can write delete. Or if you are fetching some data, if you are not changing anything or creating anything, you can use get method. So we are gonna create new user. So I'm gonna use post method. And which URL I'm gonna use? It's gonna be register. It's not gonna be a normal function, because when we create any user, it's gonna connect our database and try to create new one, and it's gonna return us a response. So all of this process takes some time, and there is no way to know this duration. So this is basically an async function. So I will write here async and my request and response. So what's this request and response? This is basically what we are sending to our server. When we create a user, we can send username, email, password, everything inside this request. So what's this response? After this whole process, it's gonna return us a response. It can be a user or just warning, or you can return any string. You can just say, okay, creating user is successful, something like that. This is our response. So I'm gonna create my function here. if you are using async function, you should create try and catch block, because we are gonna try to connect our DB and try to create new user, and all this process can be fail. So in this case, we are gonna catch this error, and you can do anything with this error. But in this tutorial, I'm not gonna deep dive into error handling. I will just return same status. So I will say status 500, which means something wrong with MongoDB or our Express server. And after that, I'm gonna return this error. And here, what I will say, firstly, I will say const new user, and it's gonna be new user model. And inside this model, I will say take everything inside this request. If I say body, it's gonna take whatever we sent here. We can send username, password, as I said. But additionally, even if you send something not related with this user, for example, if you send title, it's still gonna take this property. That's because we are saying everything inside. To prevent this, you can indicate here your own properties. You can say username, request, and body, and username. And two more, email, and password. So in this case, it's gonna take only username, email, and password. So how I'm gonna save this user? I will say const user, and I will say await, because it's gonna be an async process. So I will say new user and save. That's all. So this save method is coming from our Mongoose, that because we are using here our user schema. So if everything is successful, I can send a response. I will say response, and status will be 200, which is successful. So I will say JSON, and you can write here user has been created, or you can send this user directly. I will send this user. So let's test this route. How I'm gonna do this? I will open here my Postman application. It's an application that you can make any request for your API. It's actually really heavy nowadays. I'm considering changing this Postman, but it's still really popular, and probably you already have this application, so I can use this, doesn't matter. So I will say new request. So first request will be register. And here you can create your own collections. Let's say here block. And here I'm gonna choose my request method. It's gonna be post. So here I'm gonna write here my localhost 5000. So how I'm gonna reach this URL? We can't reach right now because we didn't indicate inside our index file. Let's go to index here. So here I'm gonna indicate my router. I will say const authentication route. Route is gonna be require, and my authentication path is gonna be routes and auth. Okay. So how I'm gonna use this route? Let's come here. After this Mongoose and before this listening port, I will say app.use. And here I'm gonna indicate my URL. Firstly, I will say API. You don't have to write this, you can say anything, but I prefer writing here API. So this URL will be auth. And here I will say my router, auth route. Okay, that's all. I will save. Okay, something is wrong. Okay, router use requires a middleware. I think we didn't export our router here. Yeah, I should export this first. I will say module exports, and it's gonna be router. Let's see again. As you can see, it's working. Perfect. So right now, if I write here my URL, it's gonna be API and auth. And here I'm gonna choose body. As you remember, we said request and body. This is this body. And here I'm gonna choose row. And here inside this JSON object, I'm gonna write here my username. And it's gonna be, let's say, Safak. And here, by the way, you should choose JSON. It's colorful right now, which means everything is okay. And here, email and safak@gmail.com. And one more thing, it's gonna be password. I will say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So if I send this right now, it's not gonna work. Let's try. Okay, this was not I was expecting that because we didn't write here register. But one more, if I send, it's not gonna work again. As you can see, we have an error here. That because this application is not able to send any JSON object inside body, to prevent this error, I will come here and say app.use, I will say express and JSON. So in this case, we can send any JSON file, any JSON object. So let's try again. I will send, as you can see, 200. Okay, successful. And my new ID, username, email, password created and updated at. Perfect. If I go to my cluster here, let's choose this. And my collections. As you can see, blog users and inside my new user. But there is a problem here. We can see this password. We are not supposed to see this password. That's because it should be always private. If someone reach your database, they can see every passwords and they can use them for some bad intentions, something like that. So how am I gonna hide these passwords? Let's come here and open new terminal. I will enter into my API. And here I'm gonna install a library. It's gonna be bcrypt. I will say yarn add bcrypt. Let's write here. And here npm.js. As you can see, it's an hashing library that we can safely store our passwords. And here, as you can see, it's an async function. We should require this and we should indicate salt rounds, and after that we can hash our password. So let's do that. Let's make this smaller, and here inside auth I will import this library, and after that let's come here, and here I will say const salt. It's gonna be await because it's a synchronous function. So I will say bcrypt and ginsalt. And you can write here any number. As you can see, in the example, it's 10. Let's write here 10. And after that, I can create my hashed password. I will say hashed pass. And here, again, await. I will say bcrypt and hash function. And inside, I'm gonna indicate my original string and this salt. I will say request and body and password that we are sending here inside this body, and we are gonna hash this with this salt. So in this case, this is our new password. So I can delete this and paste this here, and I will save. Let's come here, and again I'm gonna try with another user. Let's say John, and I will send. Okay, it's successful. Let's look inside. As you can see, our password is hashed right now. So even if someone reached this password, there is no possibility to find our original string. Awesome. I will refresh here. Okay, awesome. So let's delete this one. It's not secure. Okay, perfect. So we finished our registration. Let's come here and take care of this login process. So I will say again, router, And I'm gonna use post method again, like we did here, because we are gonna send again our user information. This time it's gonna be login URL, and here async function, request and response, and again my try and catch block, error. I will just send this as a response, and status will be 500, and JSON send this error. So what I'm gonna do here, firstly I'm gonna try finding our user. I will say const user, and I'm gonna use my model, and I will say find one. That because it's unique user, there is only one user with one username and email. So here I'm gonna write my condition, which user I'm gonna try to find. I will say username will be request and body and username. So basically we are gonna add our username here inside body, and it's gonna try to find this user inside MongoDB. Okay, so after that you can write here, if there is no user inside our DB, you can write response.status. You can say 400 wrong credentials, and here you can send wrong username, but I don't recommend you, because generally we don't say user which credential is wrong. So you can just write here wrong credentials. Okay, so if there is a user, we should validate our password, because when we write here, for example, this password, we should compare this with this hashed password. If they are the same, the user can log in. Okay, so how I'm gonna do this? I will say const validate, and I'm gonna say await again. By the way, I forgot writing here await. And again, decrypt. This time I'm gonna use compare method. First one will be request body and password, which we sent. And second one will be user.password, because we've fetched this user inside our MongoDB, which is this user, and this is user.password. So we basically compare them. And again, if it's not validated, let's write here validated actually. And again, I will copy this. If it's wrong password, I'm gonna send this wrong credentials again. So if everything is okay, I can send this user. I will say response status 200 and JSON user. So let's try. I will write here login, and let's delete this email. Firstly, I'm gonna write here wrong username, John1. I will send, as you can see, wrong credentials. So this time it's gonna be correct, and this one will be wrong. Again, wrong credentials. So finally, they are gonna be correct one, and as you can see, it returns this user. But I wanna show one more thing to you. We are sending this password. I don't wanna send this password to user. So how I'm gonna prevent this? I will come here and say const. I can take anything inside this user. For example, password or username or email, everything. And if you want to take others, you should use spread operator. And I will say here others. You can write anything here, doesn't matter. And here I will say user, and I should write here document. But before, let's try this one. I will send these others. So in this case, it's not gonna take passwords. It's gonna take other properties. If I do that, I will save and I will send again. As you can see, there is something strange here. That because we can't take these properties directly inside this user. So in this case, I should use this document. Let's write this here. .document, and again, I will save. And now I'm gonna send. As you can see, we have everything but password. Awesome. So we can also log in right now. So we finished our authentication. So I'm gonna copy this and let's go to users. Here we are gonna use this user model again. We don't need any hash method. And here I will delete here. And let's delete this actually also. Okay. So what I can do inside this user? So we can do everything except this authentication. So we can update our user and we can delete this. So in this case, as I said before, when we update something, you can use put method. So this time it's gonna be main URL, and here I'm gonna indicate my user ID. To do that, I will write here colon and ID. So basically we can use this user ID and find user, and then we can update them. So firstly, I'm gonna write here a condition. I will say if request and body and user ID, because we are gonna send this user ID inside this body like this, and it's gonna be our user ID, for example, and we are gonna send this to this URL, users, and some ID here. So basically it's gonna compare this URL with this user ID. If they are not same, it means we are not owner of this user. So in this case, we can't update this because it's not our account. By the way, we are not using JWT. I wanna make another video for JSON Web Token, and after this video, our applications will be more secure. But in this case, it's just enough, I think. I will just compare them. If request, and I will say params, because it's our parameter here. Params, and here ID. Don't forget, this is request also, but it's not body. We are not sending. We are taking from this URL. Okay, so if it's equal, I will move this here. So if it's not, I will say as. I'm gonna say response status, and it's gonna be 401, which is you are not allowed. I will say JSON. You can update only your account. Oops. Okay, perfect. So if everything is okay, if they are same number, we can use try and catch block and update this. But there's a problem here. I deleted this bcrypt, but we are gonna use this because we can update our password also. So I will say again bcrypt and require, it's gonna be bcrypt. So I will say if we are sending any password inside our body, I will say if request and body and password. In this case, we should hash this password again. I will do quickly const salt bcrypt and hash and gin salt. It's gonna be 10, and this is async function, of course, so I should await this. And after that, I'm gonna hash my password. I will say request and body and password. In this case, I'm gonna change this value. It's gonna be await and bcrypt again, and hash and previous password, request body and password, and my salt here. I did everything we have done before. In this case, I didn't write here const hash password. It's totally same thing, doesn't matter. I just changed this value. Okay, right now I can go inside this try catch block, and here I will say const updated user, and I will say await because we are gonna reach this user inside our DB. So I will say user, we have a useful method. I will say find by ID and update. So in this case, I can indicate here my ID, which is request and params dot ID, this parameter, and after that I can update my user. I will say I'm gonna use here a set method. What I'm gonna set everything inside request and body. So basically, if I send here username and it was John, for example, I'm gonna write here John and updated and comma, and my password will be 123. So I'm gonna take everything inside this body. So after that, if everything is okay, I'm gonna send this user response status will be 200 and JSON this updated user. Let's try users, and it's gonna be put method, and here let's take this user ID. It's gonna be John, and here I will leave this like that, and let's test it. Again, same mistake because we didn't use inside our index. Let's do this quickly. I will copy this, and this time it's gonna be user root, and it's gonna be users. And here again, I will duplicate this and users. I said user or users. Okay, user here. This time I can use it. Let's try. As you can see, you can update only your account because it's not our user ID. So I will change this also. They are same right now. I will send. Everything is okay. As you can see, nothing has changed here. But if I check here, I will refresh. As you can see, John updated and our different password. So why I can see this here? That's because of our Mongoose. So if I see my updated version, I should come here and say new, and it's gonna be true. So in this case, it's gonna update this user and send this new user, updated one, not old one. Let's save and try again. I will come here, update it to, for example, and send. As you can see, our username here. Updated to. Perfect. So let's delete this user. I will copy this. And here, this time it's gonna be delete method. Again, we will have this user ID async function. And again, I will check whether this ID belongs us or not. So I can say you can delete only your account. And here, we don't need this password. We are just deleting. And this also. So what I'm gonna do here, I will say await and user model. I will say find by ID and delete. Here. And here I'm gonna indicate my user ID, request, params, and ID. So after that, it's gonna delete this user and send us a message. User has been deleted. Okay, but there is a problem here. If we delete this user, we can still see this user's posts. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna delete all posts of this user. So firstly, I'm gonna find this user and find all posts. And after that, I'm gonna delete posts and this user. So what I will do here, I will write another try. And catch error. So let's move this here. Firstly, I'm gonna find this user, const user, and await user model, and I will say find by ID, and here my user ID, params.id. So if I can't find this user, I can send here response and status. This time it's gonna be 104 because there is no user like that. So I will say JSON user not found. So if I find this user, right now I can delete this and its posts. So I'm gonna import my posts here, post model. By the way, you don't have to delete all posts. Maybe you wanna still keep these posts, just delete this user, whatever you want. By the way, let's delete this. Okay. So how I'm gonna delete these posts? I will come here and say await and post model, and I will say delete many. That because we can have many posts belong same user. So I'm gonna write my condition here. I will say username user.username. As you remember, our post model, we have a username here. So in this condition, we are gonna check this username. If it's same username with this user inside DB, it's gonna delete them. Okay, so let's do this. I will say delete and this username, and we are sending our user ID here. Sorry, I said username, it's user ID. I will send. As you can see, user has been deleted. There is no posts, but it's gonna delete this user. I will refresh here. Awesome, there is no user anymore. So what else I can do here? I can get just one user. I will say get user. So in this case, I will say router.get, and it's gonna be again ID. We are gonna fetch this user by using this ID async function, request and response. I will use try and catch. I'm gonna send this error and JSON error. And here I'm gonna try to find this user. Const user is gonna be await and user model find by ID. I will indicate my param ID. And after that, again, I don't want to send every information, because when we fetch any user, we are not supposed to see its password. So I will do the same thing, const password and others. It's gonna be user.doc. So I can send this others, response status 200 and JSON user. Sorry, others. So let's create some user and see. Register, and here let's delete this. john@gmail.com. It's gonna be email. Let's send. Oops, it's delete method. It should be post because we are registering. Okay. Right now I will change this to get method, and here it's gonna be users and user ID. Let's take this and paste here. I will send. As you can see, 200 successful, and it returns this user. But I can still see this password. Something should be wrong here. That because this typo here. I will save, and again I will send. As you can see, it's here. Perfect. So we finished our user router. I will copy them, and let's go to post router. I will paste here. This time I will delete this. Maybe we are gonna need this user. I can keep this. If we don't use, we can delete. And first one will be create new post and update post and delete post and get post. So I will delete this. In this case, it's gonna be post method because we are creating new one. And here I will say const new post is gonna be new and our post model. And inside we are gonna take everything request and body. So I will say try and catch response status will be 500 and JSON is error. So I can save this new post. I will say const saved post. It's gonna be new post and save. So I can send this response status will be 200 and it's gonna be saved post. Okay. Let's come to index file and here it's gonna be post root. And here I'm gonna use this root posts and post root. Let's come here. I will copy this user ID and here I will say posts and post method, and inside this body I will say username. Okay, we are using username, not ID. So it's gonna be John updated, and here I will say title. Title is gonna be test. We have description, and it's gonna be test description. And what else? That's enough, I think. Let's try. I will send 200. Okay, but we can't see anything. Let's check here. Posts. That because I didn't use await here. It's still waiting. Again, if I send, this time it's gonna be 500. That because our title is same, because we said here we can't use same title here because it's unique. So if I come here and change this, as you can see, it's here. So let's check here and we can see our two posts here. Okay, this is user, our posts. As you can see, test and test2. Perfect. It's really easy. So what else I can do? I can update my post. So let's delete here. And it's gonna be put method. And this is gonna be our post ID. And here, let's create our logic. Firstly, I'm gonna find my post. And then I'm gonna compare post username and our username here inside body. If they are same, we can update. If they are not, it's not our post and we are not allowed to update that. So I will say try and catch. And here I will say const post. I'm gonna find this first. Find by ID. And I'm gonna say request and params and ID. So in this case, if we have an error, I will say response and status. I will say again 500 and JSON error. And after that, and again, I forgot this await. It's really important. And again, I will say try and catch. This time I'm gonna validate our user ID. And here, let's say if post and username equals request and body and username, it means it's our own post. So we can update this. Actually, we can write this if block here. That because we are not trying anything. Okay, so else I'm gonna say response and status is gonna be 101, and I will say you can update only your post. So what I'm gonna try here, I'm gonna say const updated post. So I will say await and post and find by ID and update again. I will say request params and this post ID. And after that, I'm gonna set my new properties. So I will say set. What I'm gonna set is gonna be request and body, everything inside this body. And again, I will say new here. Otherwise, we can't see this updated post. It's gonna be true. Right now, I can send this updated post. I will say response status 200 and JSON updated post. So if there's an error, I will just copy this and paste here. So let's try. It's gonna be posts and put method, and here it's gonna be post ID. Let's check here. This test2. And here username. First it's gonna be wrong one, let's say 3. And title will be test2 updated, and everything else will be the same. I will send. You can update only your post because it's not our post. If I change this, as you can see, title test2 updated, everything else same. And this is our new updated time. Perfect. So I can copy this and paste here. Right now we are gonna delete. It's easier. It's gonna be delete method. And again, if they are not same, I will say you can delete on your account. Sorry, post. And here I will just say await. So I can use this post here and delete. By the way, you can write here find by ID and delete. And you can, but we already found this post. We can delete this directly. You can do the same thing here. Doesn't matter. So here I will say post has been deleted. So let's see. This time it's gonna be delete. Again, let's test it. I will change this. You can delete on your post. Let's write here correct one. Post has been deleted. Let's check here. It's gonna be only this test. Okay, perfect. We deleted this test too. So what else we can do here? I will say get post. Again, it's gonna be post, await, post, find by ID. And after that, I can delete this because there is no password or something. And I'm gonna directly pass this post. So let's see. I will take this post ID here. And in the postman, I will say get method and posts and this ID. I will send and it's here. Test description and John updated too. Perfect. It was really easy one. And one more thing, I can get all data, all posts. Why we need this? Because when we visit our website, we should fetch all data, all posts. So what I will do, I will copy this and paste here. This time it's not gonna be ID, it's gonna be just main URL. In this case, we are gonna fetch all data, but I'm gonna add some condition here. Because when we write here main URL, we are gonna fetch all posts. And when we write here, for example, question mark and user, and when I say it John, it's gonna fetch all data, but only it's gonna check this username. It's gonna be just John. And one more thing, it's gonna be here and category. And when we say, for example, music, it's gonna fetch all data, but only category name is music. It can be complex right now, but you're gonna understand, don't worry. So how I'm gonna catch these queries? I will say const username. It's gonna be request. This time I'm gonna say query. It's gonna look at question mark, and after that first value will be our query, and after equals it's gonna be our value. And let's say user. So I will do the same thing for category. Cat name, and it's gonna be just shortcut cat. Okay. So right now I'm gonna create here a post array. That because we are gonna return this array as response. So I will say let posts. I'm saying let because it's changeable. We can change inside everything. So I will say, let's delete them actually. I will say if there is a username, posts will be, I will say await and post model. I'm gonna find, and here my condition, if username equals this username, this query, you can write this colon and username also, but after AS6, if they are same name, you can delete this. It's exactly the same thing. So this expression equals this expression. Same. Okay. So if there is category name, not username, I will say as if. By the way, you can write here just if or as if conditions or switch case. Doesn't matter. There is not only one way. So I will say if there is category name, it was cat name here. So this time our posts will be again await post, and I will say find, and this time our condition will be categories, because remember our post model here, we have a categories array here. So I'm gonna try to find this category name. So how can I say if this array includes this category name? It's really easy. I'm gonna check here in method, and here I'm gonna indicate my category name. So it basically says, look at this categories array, and if inside include this category name, just find this and assign to this post. Okay. So I will say as, if there is no username, no category name, it's gonna just fetch all posts. There is no condition. I will say posts. It's gonna be post model and just find. So right now I can return this response. Status will be 200 and it's gonna be JSON posts. Now, if you didn't understand, just watch one more time this part. I'm sure you're gonna understand. It's not that complex. So let's try. But before, I'm gonna create another post here. And this time will be, let's say, Jane, from Jane, and description will be same, doesn't matter. Okay, let's get these posts. I will say send. Okay, something is wrong. Get methods. Oh, I forgot await. Why I always forget this? I don't know. Okay, again, I will send. And as you can see, we have posts from Jane and John. So I can write here my conditions, my queries. I want to fetch all posts, but only belong to Jane. I will send, and this time we see only this post. It's gonna be only John. What was the name? John updated to. I will send. This time we only see this post. Okay, we can't test this category because we don't have any inside these posts, but doesn't matter. If it's working, it works also. I don't want to waste time. So we finished our posts also. Let's go to the categories here and finished our REST API. I will come here and I will copy this and I'm gonna export. I don't want to write them again and again. Okay, this time it's gonna be category, this model. As you remember, we have only name here, so it's gonna be really easy. And I'm not gonna delete or update, I'm gonna just create new one and get all categories. So I will say router, and post method is gonna be main URL. We are just gonna create async function, request and response. I will say const new category, new cat, and it's gonna be new category. And inside I will say request and body as we did before. And I will say try and catch. Error. Again, response status 500 and oops. Send this as JSON. So what I will do here, I'm gonna just save this data and send this. I will say const saved category. It's gonna be await and my new category, and I'm gonna just save it. And after that, I'm gonna send this status 200, oops, and JSON and saved cat. Saved cat, it's really strange. Okay, that's all. Let's create new one. But before, let's go to the index file and here categories. It's gonna be category root and here categories. And again categories and category root. Let's try. It's gonna be categories and post method. It's gonna be only name here. Name. I will say music. Let's create. As you can see, it's here. Let's check here. And categories. And music is here. Perfect. So one more thing. I'm gonna fetch all categories. I can copy this and paste here. It's gonna be get method. I will delete this and here I will say const categories and category and find. There is no condition. And after that it's gonna send these categories. If I say get and send, as you can see, we have only music here. Perfect. So one more thing I'm gonna do here. When we create any post here, we are sending our description, title, and categories. But what about post image? How I'm gonna upload new image? So I'm gonna come here, this terminal, and I will say yarn add and motor. I'm gonna enter. So this is a library that we can upload our files. Of course, you can use Firebase or Amazon AWS or whatever, any CDN. But for basic practice, you can upload inside your API. Firstly, I'm gonna create here a folder. You can say whatever you want. I will say just images. And I'm gonna upload every file inside these images. So let's close them. And here, I'm not gonna create any routes for this uploading file. Instead of this, I'm just gonna write inside my index file. It's gonna be a really easy one. I will say const multer and require multer. So firstly, I'm gonna create a storage. I'm gonna indicate this images folder. So how I'm gonna do this? After this MongoDB. Let's write here const storage. And I'm gonna use my multer here. And I will say disk storage. And inside this, I'm gonna indicate my destination. It's gonna take 3 parameters. First one will be request, and second one our file, and third one our callback function. And this callback function is basically take care of our errors. If there is any error, it's gonna take care of this. So I will say callback, and first one will be null, and second one will be our destination, which is images. So after that, I'm gonna indicate my file name, and again request, file, and callback, and again null, and you can create here new file name, but we are gonna send this file name through our React application here, client. So what I will say request and body and name. Oops, I forgot this arrow here. Okay, perfect. So basically, it's gonna take our file and it's gonna save inside these images, and file name will be the name which we are providing. So how I'm gonna upload this file? I will say const upload. I'm gonna use multer again. This time I'm gonna indicate my configuration. It's gonna be storage, and this storage will be our storage here. This one. Okay, I will say app.post because it's gonna be post method. We are uploading something. So I will say API upload. We are gonna use this URL, and after that I will say upload, and it's gonna be single because we are gonna upload only one file, and its name will be file. And I'm gonna write here request and response. I'm gonna say response.status. It's gonna be 200, and JSON file has been uploaded. So let's try. I will go to Postman, and here my URL will be upload, and here post method, and file name will be, let's say, my image. Let's look at here and take this extension. It's JPEG. And don't worry, we are using this Postman only for test purpose. After that, we are gonna use our React application, and we are gonna create a file name logic. And after that, I will choose here form data, and key will be file because our key here is file. Let's write here. So here it's not gonna be text, it's gonna be file. Let's choose our image. Here I'm gonna choose this one, and if I send, okay, there is something wrong because we can't use here our body. So let's write here for now not request body name, just for manually hello.jpg, and I will save and send again. As you can see, file has been uploaded, and here inside images, this is our image. So why I did this here? That because in the Postman we are sending our data, but we can't send this name here. So instead of this, I wrote here manually. But inside our client side, we are gonna take this request body and name. So far everything is perfect, it works. So that's all. I think we finished our API here. Let's delete this image. If you are confused about this multer, don't worry, after client side you are gonna understand better. So I can close this. We can create new user, register and login. We can create post with image. We can delete them, update them, awesome. So let's close this and close this Postman. So we finished this project. I hope you enjoyed it. If you learned something, please like the video, and if you want to see some more, you can subscribe the channel. So that's all. I hope I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.